Hello everybody, welcome back to a very special Christmas episode of the Zone 3 Media podcast. I'm Ben, I'm hosting today's episode. I'm joined again by Harry on my right and Sam on my left.
Hello.
Today's episode is going to be based around the theme of fear, which, yeah, we all know what fear means, we all know what it feels like, but we're going to be talking about some of the ins and outs of that in the historical context, in a modern context, in a cultural context. So first and foremost, I'm just going to ask these guys, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of the word fear?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind when you mention the word fear is the symptoms that come with it. Adrenaline, heart racing, sweating, and the feeling of being overwhelmed.
Yeah, for me it's like a break from just being in sort of flow state. Yeah, emotions are heightened, and yeah, that's
You're kind of out of control.
yeah.
Aren't you? It's like instincts take over. It's a very instinctive thing. It's fear. Yeah, definitely.
Primal. It's probably the most base feeling that we all felt all those years ago
Yeah,
when we first evolved.
It's what's allowed life to even take hold. Because another one of the questions I was going to ask is, what does a world without fear look like?
Okay, well, should we move on to that question?
What do you think? Yeah.
I don't think we'd be here. I think we wouldn't have evolved as a species without that sense of fear. I don't think any species would have evolved to the level they are without that sort of... It's difficult to say whether animals have emotions, but they've certainly got something built in that gives them a sense of fear. You see it within sort of cats and dogs when they see a fox or something like that, that causes them to be wary and go into their sort of reactionary response state. But yeah, I don't think we would be here without it.
No, because I suppose not even in terms of the animals, but even in terms of our progression as a species from the kind of caveman and all that stuff, from being a hominid to what we are now, that instinctive fear is so vital to animals that aren't naturally predators. Like when we first came about, we weren't by any means natural predators. We eventually learned to hunt and stuff, but before that, we were prey. And I think it's proven that prey animals spend a lot more time in a state of fear and anxiety and panic, because the prey, if it wants to survive, has to start running before the predator does. So it's a very tied in thing.
And that's the case with us humans.
Exactly. Yeah. I was doing a bit of research actually, kind of around like fear and how fear ties to anxiety in the kind of natural.
But they're two different feelings.
Two very different feelings, but also very closely related.
Yeah.
We share this with
fear. Fear is the feeling of something in front of you causing you fear, whereas anxiety is the fear of something happening to you in the future that hasn't happened yet.
It's almost like the memory of that. The
memory
fear.
Of previous. Yeah, exactly.
We actually share the kind of link between fear and anxiety with a few different animals. Not obviously not all animals have the capacity to feel anxious. All animals can feel, scared, I suppose, instinctively. But in terms of anxiety, it's often more intelligent ones like chimps, elephants, cats and dogs can be seen actually as exhibiting proper anxiety. Some of them will like stress eat as a result or not sleep properly.
I mean, you can see it, can't you, when your dog... did you have dogs as kids?
Yeah. I've got little
cats.
Hugo, yeah.
I mean, cats, when you kind of step a bit too quick, they absolutely freak out, don't they?
And yeah, exactly. And actually, they're at their most vulnerable when they're eating. And when you try and stroke them when they're eating, they don't like it at all. No matter how close you are to the cat, they'll always sort of give a response which, when they're eating, is telling you to fuck off, basically.
You know what? Weirdly, my cat won't eat unless he is being stroked.
Oh, really?
He needs that attention. Yeah, he's a right little attention whore. He loves it. He'll just stand by his tray and actually not eat unless you stood right behind him stroking him, the little weirdo. So I guess that's been conditioned into him.
Or did you ever and this isn't really fear, but when you were walking your dog and he'd have a shit basically, and then the way that he looks at you and it makes eye contact is proper weird. I noticed
Am I allowed
at the
to
time.
do this?
Yeah, no, I think it's because he feels or she feels so vulnerable.
Yeah.
That it's
Almost
like looking at you, look
yeah,
after me.
like
Yeah,
look after you.
it's
They are
weird.
vulnerable. It is the most vulnerable a living thing can really be when you're having a shit in it. Not really any way around that.
No, exactly.
So we've kind of already made our way into part one of what I was going to propose, which is the idea of primal or primordial fear, which is fear as that ancient emotion, arguably the most ancient of all emotions. So obviously fear is categorized in loads of different ways by rational and appropriate, or irrational and inappropriate. The primordial fears, annoyingly there's not an actual official list of what constitutes these, but obviously we can take examples that are born of our ancestral need for survival, like darkness, predators, death, heights and isolation. And these are things that a few of them still hold up today, but in that first kind of bid for survival before history, it would have been so essential to live by those strict rules, or you just wouldn't have made it. And that's kind of got us to where we are now, I suppose.
And we still experience those fears today. And actually, we experience those as a result of our ancestors. I think there was a guy called Seligman in 1971. He proposed a theory saying that the fears that our ancestors experienced are embedded in our psyche, and that results in us experiencing sort of fears that we hadn't even come across in our childhood.
Genetic thing. Then.
Like spiders and stuff. If we didn't even have an encounter, like for me, I'm scared of spiders. I hadn't even encountered probably spiders in my childhood, but I was already scared of them. And I think my mum's scared of spiders, and I think it's deeply embedded in our psyche.
It's quite a popular one, isn't it? Spiders.
Arachnophobia, it's really? Definitely one of the
I think that
main ones that comes up.
Yeah, I think that could potentially relate to Carl Jung and the collective unconsciousness. That we all share that based off our collective understanding of spiders, and that being a common sort of scary, the epitome of fear in sort of the natural world.
But you do think that's been nurtured, not nature.
Yeah.
So it's still how you were brought up and how you were. So it's probably like the attitudes your mum had towards spiders.
Yeah, well, and I think the whole world. I think it's quite a common.
People don't like that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
They're too fast. They move too fast. And
8 legs,
I quite like spiders,
8 eyes.
Yeah.
I'll go and pick one up as long as it's not like poisonous looking. Yeah.
I probably wouldn't go out of my way to pick it up. Other things don't bother me. I think if something had 6 legs, I really wouldn't care. But the way of it having 8 legs, arachnids are just a little bit creepier. I think.
And the eyes.
The more legs it has, the less recognisable it is as something similar to us as a life form. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
They're quite cute.
Well, I think you'd be in a minority.
Yeah, I'm the minority.
Exactly.
No, a lot of people this is most of my family just freaked out. By spiders. It's common.
Well, that brings me to another question for this particular section. So you've already said spiders as something that you have. Would you say you have arachnophobia, or would you just say you don't like spiders? Because I don't like spiders, but I definitely don't have arachnophobia.
So I've definitely got arachnophobia.
Oh yeah.
I see a picture of it on the internet, and that irks me. You can almost call that an irrational fear. Because it's not there in front of me, causing me any sort of danger or presenting any harm. But it does get into my mind and cause me fear.
Weird, man.
Yeah, I've got another fear as well. So I've got 2 main fears.
Is this a rational or an irrational?
I think my next fear is rational, and that's the fear of going insane.
Yeah, that's pretty rational, I guess.
Losing your mind and not being in control of your reality, basically.
That actually comes into a different classification of the fears, which I'll get into in a little bit later on. But that comes into it. How about you, Sam? Do you have any sort of... we're not going about irrational, like a phobia. We're thinking rational fears that particularly affect you.
Or rational fears.
Yeah, that more than usual. Something that proper stands out to you as like a real fear.
I think also the going insane one, but sometimes I'm able to rationalise it by if I was to go insane, I wouldn't really realise it anyway, and I'd be so deep in my own mind that you wouldn't be in the same mindset as you are now.
Do you know anyone that has dementia in your family?
No.
Okay, because that's quite a good sort of example of that.
Yeah, that's the most accessible sort of way that everyone probably will experience that at least once in their life.
Exactly. When your grandparent or great grandparent doesn't know who you are, but I don't think they know who they are, and so they don't know the fact that they don't know you, and therefore it's not causing them any harm or pain in the fact that they don't know you. It's causing you pain because a loved one doesn't know who you are, but they don't, and therefore at least they're not suffering. It's
not exactly blissful for them, is it?
But exactly.
It's still.
I do think it's quite easy to get over irrational fears. For example, one I was able to come over was lifts.
Yeah.
At uni one time, I got stuck in this like library room.
Yeah.
And me and my mate, I think I might have
Was that the Phil Robinson?
Oh yeah, you did tell me
told
about
you
this. Yeah.
So we got stuck in there. Like we kind of, did it on purpose. We were like, oh fuck it, let's stay in overnight. And then they'd open up at like 8. I don't know why.
Why?
I don't know. It was just a stupid like thing.
An intrusive thought, or
no, we were just kind of like sat in there. And we needed to do a bit more work, and we kind of were chilling in there. And then they locked the door, and then we were just like, oh, should we just stay in all night?
Yeah.
And but it got a bit later on, and it was quite high.
What time are we talking?
We stayed in there till like 5 a.m.
5 a.m. Yeah.
But it got really cold, and like we needed the toilet, obviously, and we were hungry and tired, and so and I started to feel really trapped because we couldn't physically get out. It wasn't like an emergency exit.
There was no windows you could sort of.
Well, there were windows, but it was like.
Oh, were you high up?
It was a super tall building.
Shit, yeah.
Like if you couldn't jump out, you could probably smash the window and climb out, but if you fall, you die. So
Yeah.
I was like, I started panicking like if a
So you were
fire
trapped.
goes off.
Yeah,
Trapped.
trapped.
So then from then on, I developed a fear of getting in lifts.
Yeah.
And I never knew what caused it.
Does that relate to a wider one of claustrophobia? Do you think?
I don't really get claustrophobia.
You're not afraid of small spaces?
Agoraphobia, actually.
Agoraphobia.
Yeah, that's agoraphobia. I was looking into that, and that's one of the
What's that?
3 classifications of how phobias are kind of because everything's classified. You see, so they're classified as well. So let me see exactly.
Agoraphobia.
So
Never heard of that.
yeah. So phobias are divided into 3 categories. There's specific phobias, which is stuff like arachnophobia, choleraphobia, whatever.
Yeah.
Social anxiety disorder, which is like the fear of kind of social judgment, which
social
is,
situations in general.
social.
Okay, yeah.
Which will lead to you being judged, and that's usually what kind of pushes it, rather than
Yes.
just being scared of people. You're scared of how people will observe you and interpret you. And then the third one is agoraphobia, which I thought was the social thing, because I mean we were talking.
You
about
can't
that
leave
other
the
day,
house.
but it's like that's your own perceived inability to escape. So it doesn't even have to be an enclosed space. It could be somewhere like a shopping mall, but you have that ingrained sort of worry that you'll get trapped there, that you won't be able to escape or get home if you need to. So I guess
I've
that's
had that.
kind of
When we went to a film, that British film festival,
Yeah.
it was in a basement,
Yeah.
and we were kind of in a corner and surrounded by people, and all of a sudden,
People that we didn't know. Which
Yeah,
is probably an
even though they
important
were like-
factor.
nice people, or whatever.
yeah.
Like I started panicking. I was like, oh, I feel like trapped here.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to get out. And I was able to calm myself down and forgot about it. But
So maybe that's your fear then, agoraphobia.
maybe
The overarching.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To be honest, I only really learned what it exactly meant just a couple of days ago when I was researching into it, and it's
So
it's an
claustrophobia is a subcategory of agoraphobia.
claustrophobia is.
It's one of the symptoms.
I don't know, because this one is more of this is almost a bit more of a social thing. This is involved with like open space. It's almost like the other way. It's like you'd go somewhere. It doesn't have to be a small space at all. Agoraphobia could be anywhere, but it's just about you would feel kind of stressed.
Okay.
Whereas claustrophobia is literally
Does it
a
relate
small space.
to more of the specific ones, like arachnophobia?
What?
Claustrophobia. You put it in a category of...
Yeah, that would be that would be
okay, I
within
see.
specific phobias sort of thing. So any particular one thing would be within the
In a
specific
specific
phobia
one.
category.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. What about, when you can't leave the house because of germs? Like the aviation or
Yeah.
wherever.
I think that would be in specific, or maybe that'd be in social
like an
anxiety.
OCD kind of.
Yeah, you know how there's some people who can't leave the house because, the only way they'll leave the house with like rubber latex gloves on and like they're spraying everything because they're so afraid of catching a disease or that it completely dictates their lives.
Well, at that point, that is a phobia, isn't it? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's interesting to think of where's the line between something like OCD and then when that actually does become a phobia or fear. Because I think a lot of people with OCD, not that I know many of them, I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a fear. It's just more of that like proper compulsion. It's like, that thing, that voice in your brain that tells you have to do something or something.
I think it's like an anxiety
Yeah,
disorder.
rather than...
Yeah.
Whereas actually being scared of germs and stuff is probably like a bit of a different thing, but it's all weird how it's all linked and how it's such a universal thing as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Like everyone, no matter what culture you're from or what country you're from, there's people who do suffer from that thing, so it's like unavoidable really. Must be something that brings
Even
it on.
though our societies and stuff like that are quite different. And,
Yeah.
our circumstances are different. There's a shared commonality in terms of experience of certain individuals who experience similar symptoms.
It'd be very interesting to know how that's kind of, if you could get like a demographic sort of scale of how that's changed throughout time, throughout history. If phobias are something that's a lot more of a modern thing, because back in the day people would have just had to get over it, or people have always been scared of the same weird little specific things that people are scared of today. But it just probably wouldn't have been recorded. They'd have thought you were like mental or something like that.
I think it was probably less because there was more maybe things to worry about. I think because in the modern day, like there's more conveniences. Like it's easier to start getting scared of like things that realistically probably shouldn't scare you, and I think so anyway. Like that, but
related to these things. You're constantly bombarded with sort of
can't escape from, can you?
That's like
footage and content that relates to your sort of deepest, darkest fears, or creates a fear that out of it, because you're just fed so much information.
Well, the good one for that is like phone snatchers in London. Fucking on them like Suron bikes. I grip my phone so tight when I'm in central London.
I've got both hands on that shit.
Looking around.
I don't even take mine out.
No,
I actively do not try and take mine out of my pocket if I'm in central. I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna. I'm not about not today.
No. But that's purely out of the sort of CCTV footage that we see on social media. I've never had my phone snatched.
I've never seen anyone get.
I've had my phone snatched actually, but that was like.
Oh no! But is that a mugging?
No,
Was that a mugging? Like where?
I was at Primavera in Barcelona, I was walking from like when the gig finishes and everyone's walking to like the next one or whatever.
Yeah.
So I felt a hand in my pocket, and then like I grabbed the hand like instinctively.
Yeah.
And it was this like woman. She was probably about 5 foot.
Yeah.
And like she was pregnant and stuff, just on her wands, and obviously I had her, and she didn't have my phone, so I'm like giving my phone. She was like, "Oh, no English," and then like. I'm there for like 10 minutes because I don't know what to do. Like, how do I get my phone back?
Yeah.
And then this random girl came up to me who I think was like English and said, "Is this yours?" Because there was a picture of me and my girlfriend.
Yeah.
So I think someone might have been in on it and dashed it because they saw that I.
So, or maybe it was in the other pocket and she put your hand in as a sort of decoy thing to make you go for that while someone else snatched the other.
No, because I felt like the whole weight leave me.
Oh, okay, fair.
I'm quite like on it with.
All
the time. I don't wear them shorts anymore because they're like quite baggy.
Too loose.
That's terrible. I didn't even think of someone like going into your pocket. I know they say pickpockets are active.
I've just installed a new fear in you, Ben.
I know, man. Yeah, that kind of brings me on to something else. It was interesting. You said creating fears, and I was thinking that maybe the reason that we have so much of the more little anxieties today is because throughout our history as a species, as things have gotten more convenient and easy for us, as we don't have to worry about things like predators or disease quite as much, maybe it's a natural thing that our brain needs something to have anxiety about and fear. So we've just replaced the things like getting killed by a bear or some shit with stuff to do with phones and stuff to do with like the modern social world.
The more we have, the more vulnerable we are to that.
The more you've got to lose,
it becomes more. The taller you build the house of cards, the easier it is to fall over.
And anxiety is a good thing though because it motivates you as well.
I think that's a point of conflict that we're getting.
It has its uses. Yeah,
I think it does have its uses,
but also it's very detrimental to basically everyone. I think at some point, everyone, if like we were saying earlier, if fear didn't exist, I don't think we would either. But if anxiety didn't exist, maybe that'd be a completely different story.
Exactly.
Because anxiety isn't fear. Anxiety is the
concern
like
about
the
future.
The preconception of fear before fear is even present at all. It's like the fear of the memory of fear.
Exactly.
Fear of fear, as Roosevelt, I think.
Well,
put it,
exactly. It's the fear of something that's going to happen in a simple level.
Yeah.
It's something that you have no reason to fear, because it's not in your immediate present moment. But it's the playing on your mind of something that's going to happen in the future, which is completely unhelpful.
Yeah. Going on to part 2 of the podcast today is fear in the modern life, which does link into all this sort of talk of anxiety and the social stuff we were going about earlier. So I've got another sort of method of classification of fear for us, which I think ties in a lot more to, it's less primordial and more about the modern world. So it's from a Dr. Karl Albrecht. He calls them 5 basic fears, which are supposedly the only 5 fears everybody in the world shares. So there's extinction, which death,
Yeah.
mutilation, which is damage to the body, obviously, loss of autonomy, which is,
Insane.
like you said, going insane or losing yourself,
Yeah.
separation, which could be isolation, loneliness, whether that's literally getting lost or feeling so isolated in yourself that you're depressed and stuff.
But ultimately, being alone.
Being alone,
Yeah.
yeah. And finally, ego death,
Yeah.
which I guess can be interpreted as humiliation or shame to the point where
Your self-worth.
your
is in a bin.
self-worth completely disappears, basically. So-
There are different kinds of ego deaths.
Yeah, I suppose, but it can all go
in
into
the psychedelic sense, that's the thing you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, sure.
Like
I don't
Nirvana.
think he means that, does he? No.
Yeah.
So he argues that every other fear that you can think of does fall into one of these categories,
Okay.
with, I guess, the possible exception of some of the weird phobias and stuff. But in terms of actual valid fears that we have in day-to-day life, they will all kind of, fall into these somehow.
Yeah.
For example, jealousy could be an expression of the fear of separation or devaluation, not being valued as much as someone else, or even the ego death part of feeling worthless because of how jealous you are of something else.
And other people's perceptions of you.
Yeah, exactly. It all boils down
ties
to
back
that.
to
Quite interesting. So, like, I think that now, with these fears, rather than a survival tool, fear has become more of a social tool for us to navigate the kind of social world. We have like etiquette, and I think embarrassment is something that everyone has at the core to different degrees, but I think that's become the new instinct. Is almost like that social instinct of people being so wary. Like, I see it especially here in London, of like, as we're from places where people do just, you bump into someone in the street, you nod at them, you say hello to them, and that's like just kind of a very normal thing to do. Whereas down here, because I'm sure we've discussed this before, but it's like down here in a mega city, there's so many people that kind of personal those little interactions that don't really mean anything, but yet you just don't carry quite as much weight. And people, I think, socially here, there's a completely different manner of etiquette that people just go around. I don't know, I can't really explain it or put it into words too well, but it's...
I think it's interesting, like, you know, the outcasts, like, I'm going to use like homeless people as an example, that you see like lying on the street with like the shoes off and like, I don't know, like, uncut toenails, and there's just no embarrassment there. And I find it interesting how do you get to that point where it's just like you just don't...
Well, how do you know that there's no embarrassment there?
Well,
Life circumstances have put you in that position where you have no other choice.
Yeah, they don't have to worry about that anymore.
But you still could feel embarrassed.
Well, one time I was on the train this is in Paris, and there was a guy sleeping, and he had like toenails that were probably like that long, and I feel like...
But he hasn't got enough money to pay for a nail clipper that can sort that out.
I don't know about
I mean, if you wanted to deal with it...
It's not a priority.
personally,
Your
I'd
priority is food, a bed for the night.
We saw a guy in Brixton. We were walking to Brixton Station the other night when this lad went to a casino. Remember, there was that guy with his ass crack out. There was that guy just like asleep, face into the corner, full like arse, just kind of like out. And we were just like, again, how do you find yourself to the point where you don't care enough to not have your arse out for everyone who walks past to see?
Priorities change.
Yeah.
You literally just... Your priorities are whatever they are.
That is,
It's almost like the regression of the thing we were talking about earlier. Like, our fears have been replaced, and we don't have to fight for survival anymore. We live really comfortable lives, whereas certain people don't have that same privilege, and so for them, embarrassment and social anxiety probably basically doesn't exist anymore, and they actually do have to worry about the things that we had to worry about, call it 500 years ago, getting food, finding shelter, finding stuff that's warm enough so you don't freeze to death at night. Yeah. It's crazy.
Oh, wait, in the same way, relating it back to us as Zone 3 Media, we faced, I think, the challenge of cringe, right? We faced the awkward position of posting sort of content when you're making films, where you know you're going to experience the feeling of cringe, and others telling you or responding to you that, oh, that's embarrassing, stop doing what you're doing, and, you know, feeling sort of cringe for you. And I think, that's something that's quite interesting.
Is it is it a good feel, like, to feel...
All artists experience it. They all, and in order to get to the point of where more successful artists, they fight through that cringe and persist with continuing their art whilst facing sort of constant sort of backchat or murmurs around their art being embarrassing or cringe, and I just noticed that to be a very interesting symptom of phenomena that of people.
So if you stand out, that's what happens.
Exactly.
Like,
when you become an outcast of society, well, not necessarily society, but an outcast of your friendship
peers,
group.
Did you feel that when you were like, because for our film you were very much the centerpiece? And did you feel that like when you were being shown on the screen, or?
Yes, yeah, you do. You're kind of looking around and looking for other people's perception of you. I think I'm a bit fortunate in that I'm okay with that. I've never really had social anxiety per se. I've never really worried too much around other people's perception on me in a social circumstance. But in terms of an artistic sense, yes, it's the most frightening thing, seeing yourself on the big screen with other people around you watching that and judging you, and judging your craft.
And
so
for context, we made a film on Harry's life and his relationship with his mum and stuff at university, which was showed to like 30 people like each week, and footage of him interviewing his mum where no one else was using themselves apart from maybe one girl was of your film, Ben. She was, but it was a bit different, wasn't it? Because we were following Harry's journey.
Yeah, exactly.
It was very much you were like the centre. It was all it stripped quite a lot of your life pretty bare for everyone to see. It was very honest, in terms of some of the things you revealed in the film and stuff. It was quite, I think, pretty brave thing to do, to be honest.
And there were actually, there were consequences of doing that. There were, and how do we continue it further? There are still consequences of certain relationships in my life, probably with my mum, and how that would affect her, that I had to sort of think about and be fearful about, because they're quite extreme consequences in my mind that I've built them up to be.
But you overrode those.
But I overrode those.
And you went with it.
Exactly.
And is that something
for
that
the artistic endeavour?
Was that like, did that take a lot of very active effort from you to override that, or was it just something that you kind of decided at one time you would was there like that one moment where you were like, well, I'm doing it, and then you never looked back?
We were constantly making decisions about what was right for my relationship with my mum and my mum's just in herself. We were constantly sort of treading on glass a little bit around sort of certain things that, how her portrayal, how she was presented, we had that consistently in mind, and worrying about that. We still are, like, we haven't released the film yet, and probably one of the biggest reasons why we haven't released it yet is kind of that concern for her, and how it affects her. So it's an interesting one.
Because she was open for like shots as well during every screening, and people would laugh at some of the things she would say. So she was very, very vulnerable and probably didn't think it through, to be honest. Like what the extent as to what was going to be shown,
what it meant to be, what she was doing,
and how it would look.
Because I didn't know either, to be honest.
I didn't know.
But doing it again, I'd be like, oh my god, you're really gonna be exposed for because we interviewed her, for at least 7 hours plus. Stuff's gonna come out eventually, isn't it? Which it did.
Yeah, Lex Friedman, he always says that an hour conversation with someone isn't enough, whereas you have a 3-hour conversation with someone that reveals their true character, because they can't put up the walls that they initially are trying to. Eventually, they always inevitably slip or let them down.
2 hours or 1 hour?
I think it's 3 hours.
You say 3 hours?
Yeah, 3 hours.
I think that's right.
3 hours, You can cover a lot in 3. You can almost... I've definitely had conversations with people for 35 minutes where I'm like, I have exhausted you as a conversation. And this is it. I can't actually even think of anything else to ask you anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's in friendships though, when you first meet people, it's very surface level. But then over time, you get to know them deeper and you start understanding them as a person a bit more, and their maybe darker side and good side. And
it all ties back, funnily enough, to that kind of the anxiety is a social tool. We don't reveal all our weird shit about us straight away. When you first meet someone, you very much put on that mask, don't you, of right, well, I'm going to try and be pretty normal. I'm going to try and be probably quite funny. Try and be relatable.
It's almost like a game, I think.
It is literally a game, and it all comes down to that kind of the modern fear of being, of not fitting in.
Anxiety hinders us. you push through that anxiety, as I was sort of initially starting with that point about the creative endeavour and the concern about how other people perceive you in this creative endeavour. A lot of people sort of they fall at the first hurdle around sort of shame and embarrassment and cringe, whereas the successful people, they're the ones who manage to break past that sort of perception and not necessarily care about how other people perceive them, and they just continue to play to make.
It's biological that some people just have it in them to just keep going, or do you think it's just like anyone can learn to?
Anyone can.
I think it's nurtured. Yeah, I don't think it's a biological thing. I think basically everything that makes up who we are, just like not talking about like stuff like mental disorders and stuff, but I think basically everything is how you're raised.
Any anxiety can be overcome. Cognitive behavioural therapy is the exposure to your sort of anxieties. It's CBT. It's
not cock and ball torture.
No. Very different. Well, if you had an anxiety around cock and ball torture,
I think we all do.
Yeah. You got exposed to it enough times, you probably wouldn't.
You'd probably be like, do it again, more.
But you know how like KGB spies, when they're tortured,
are
so fearless. It's because they've been through that experience
torture
so
training,
many times that they know how to handle themselves, and it's not a new feeling that they're experiencing, so they're able to get through it. But it's like anxieties with that in general.
Do you think it's possible to be completely immune to torture? Do you think it's ever possible for anyone to actually achieve immunity to torture? Because I personally don't.
No, you can put an act on, but I think deep down, I
think even in terms of like just physical pain that you can cause to someone, no matter how well trained someone is, surely if you wanted information that someone has,
I think if the information's strong enough to, like, say for example it's like about your mum or your dad, someone super close that you can't give up, like, you know.
Yeah, because there's love sometimes conquers. So love, we're gonna get onto that in one of our next topics, but I think love can sometimes conquer
on
other
paper
emotions.
It does, but when someone's like, right, well, I'm gonna cut off your dick, I'd be like, all right, well, hang on a minute, you know,
because you got a moment to process.
What did you want to know again?
Yeah, because you got a moment to process it. Whereas if someone's about to shoot your sister, there's various sort of stories of people jumping in front of the bullet to save a loved one.
Oh yeah, so I like to think that I would do that with pretty little hesitation. But in terms of literally just, can your love for someone, let's say if they're saying, tell me where this person is or whatever, but in terms of the actual extent of the physical torment that someone can inflict upon you, is there ever a way to truly overcome and have power of the mind over your body, like to the point where someone could be like,
that's what
doing all these things. Yeah, but you know what I mean. If someone's like, all these horrible things and methods that people have to torture people, is there a way that an individual can ever actually truly become immune to that, no matter what they do?
I mean, Hollywood makes you think so.
Hollywood, I was about to say, it's the movies,
like,
right?
They've been punching him for 5 hours and he's like, I'm not telling you anything. It's like, realistically, they just started with his fingernails and stuff and all that horrible stuff. So
you're probably into a different mindset that you've never been in, that I feel like you'd never know until...
There are people who can block out pain.
Man.
Yeah, that's Wim Hof, he does...
But for how long? Like,
well, it's the people, who like do trivial things like walk on like burning at
coals.
Sit in ice for like 10 hours.
Exactly, and they can block out the pain.
Them Shaolin guys, they're pretty heavy with that sort of stuff.
So I actually probably do think it is possible.
Probably, yeah. Should we
experiment? Yeah, but pain is a different thing to anxiety.
Yeah,
because pain's the experience of your body's response to a cause.
But pain teaches fear.
Yeah,
instinctively.
Exactly. You remember it. Yeah.
It was interesting, just to finish there, when we did the interviewing with your mum, we spoke about touching like hot things. Do you remember that? And she had quite a different view that the child should be allowed to like touch the boiling pan or whatever it was, whereas you were learn, but you were saying the parent's job is to prevent the child from touching it
because they don't have an understanding of the world.
But
that feels like a classic parable. I feel like I've definitely heard that used as an example somewhere before, in terms of letting the kid touch I have a visual, maybe it's in a film or something, where there's like, I have a visual image of like a parent seeing the kid about to do it and they think no, and they let him do it, because it's the best teacher, isn't it?
But it's a metaphor of basically giving a child a lot of freedom to learn mistakes, and at a young age, I want to make that very clear. Not like we're talking like 5 or 6 years old here. I think that's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
And then being 5 or 6 years old without an understanding of the world, which was my stance, and making the mistakes that can cost you pretty dearly because you don't have an understanding of the world.
I guess it's probably like there's like extreme ends, like jumping from a high place, right? Obviously that's do it, but then there's also like the other end, which is maybe more like encourage, like falling over on your bike is a perfect example.
There's a line, isn't there?
You've got to fall off your bike
to learn how to ride.
Exactly, but so there's probably a bit of a middle bit where like it's a bit blurred, and should you?
But when you're learning how to ride, who's the first person that's next to you? Always making sure that that the fall isn't too bad.
Oh, that's quite sweet, man. Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. Yeah, that's true. They have to be there, don't they?
Exactly.
Even if
they're always
if they do let
supervising.
you take a tumble, they never leave.
They never make it a bad. It'll never be a bad tumble because they're always there to pick you back up.
Shouldn't be detrimental. Maybe it's like it's
no,
a little fall. You graze you, cut your knees.
They're not going to be like, they go towards the main road.
Run in front of that car. Let's see.
Yeah,
do that again.
When I broke my arm, that was like one of the best lessons I've ever taught myself. Don't do that shit.
What did you do?
I was just it was so stupid, man. I was trying to climb over so I had a little my garden path, and there was like little stairs that go down into this like lower bit, which was paving slabs, and the staircase had a railing next to it, so you could climb over and you jump down. There was like a 2-meter drop, and we were about to go out for a meal. And so I was excited, giddy, thinking we're off pub tea, let's have it, buzzing.
Fish and chips.
Man, I was like 7 or 8 or something. Probably. We
getting lit on the J2Os all night.
Yeah, man, I was excited for that glitterberry
Coca-Cola.
J2O, you know what I mean? So I was like, buzzing, run outside, tried to climb over this fence to jump down into my garden and look really cool. My foot got stuck. I just ate shit. I like face planted straight down into and there was the paving slabs, and then they stopped, and then there was gravel, so there was about a 2-inch maybe gap where the paving slabs ended, and I just landed on my arm on that edge of the paving slab, and it just snapped straight through both of those bones, and I laughed for a few seconds, and then I just started screaming, and I was like, my arm's burning, and it was just, again, I've never done it since, because I've never broken a bone since, actually, because
I've never broken
I've taken risks and got lucky, but in terms of doing stuff as stupid as that, it is the best teacher. That pain makes you so scared. I didn't know what was going to happen because I'd never felt anything like that before. That fear of what the hell is happening to my arm and my body, am I dying? It makes you think, don't want to do that again.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one when you do break a bone, because I broke my wrist. I was on like a rope swing, and it snapped the twig as I was like flying around, and then like fell in the water. Like it was like over water. It wasn't very big, like I don't know, 5 meters. Nah, 4 meters. Yeah. But then I was in the water, and then I was like, why am I here? And then this shot of pain, and like, oh my god, just that.
How'd you break it in the water?
Because obviously it was one of them where you
just turned your wrist.
Put my wrist to like land in the water.
It was a very deep
water.
It was a stream.
Nice.
So there's no depth.
That's on you, mate.
that shit was pretty stupid.
No, but it was like I'd done it 100 times.
Have you been on one since?
Yeah, I did it once more because I like to not. I'll just be more careful with a stick because it was like
you test it, don't you?
Yeah.
So that's the symptom of that's the result of you experiencing that, is that you'll always now check.
That fear makes you prepare. So now before it's testing.
And it's not like I'm never going to go on a rope swing, because then you limit. If you live your life like that, I think you're going to limit yourself, because I think just testing the stick, not over, and not just some random swing that you found in the wood. Make sure it's.
But that's a form of productive anxiety. I think
that
teaches you of like how to be safe. Based off previous experiences.
Probably a really good metaphor for like everything, basically, actually. So I'm sure you could apply that mindset to like so many different things.
Like the universe and why we're here.
Yeah.
Just think of the rope swing. That's how you can do it.
Right, well, I'm gonna wrap up this little segment by asking you guys a question. What is the most scared that you have ever been?
I don't know exactly what mine is.
Yeah.
Mine's a long tail though, so... Yeah.
I'll go with mine. Yeah, so it was up in the Lake District. It was winter, and I sort of started the lakes and on my own, started hiking on my own, got like more confident to the point where I took my friend who was like quite a beginner in hiking, and I felt like a Sherpa taking it up the mountains, but like the problem was it was really snowy. Once you get higher, it was quite calm. It was sunny on surface level, but yeah, we got
when you go above cloud
700 meters up in the air. It was on a place called Sharp Edge on Blencathra, and we got to the point midway through where we can't go back because it's more dangerous than going forward, but going forward is also dangerous. And we were like kind of stuck on the mountain, and I was like proper panicking because if we slipped, like we could have died. People have died on there, and I was thinking like that was probably the most fear. But I also had adrenaline, so I.
Did you have a sense of dread when you were looking over the edge? Was there a feeling of like dread?
I didn't look back.
Okay, fair. Yeah.
I just kept, but I was kind of thinking, oh, this is so stupid. Like I should not have done.
Yeah. It's like when you get to a moment where you can't get out of, and you're like, oh, it was just so pointless. Costing my life.
But you don't even think, like, I feel like you don't even consider the pointlessness of it all. You don't even think
No,
that
you
this was
just keep
done
going.
because you're so
Instinct.
scared. You just have to be you just have to fight through
Well, yeah, in my story I do.
it. Is that wrapped up, or did you
No,
get
you
out?
go.
That's wrapped up. Yeah, I think. But obviously we got to the top, and I was like, that was stupid. But back to the sort of analogy of the rope swing, I would be way more like versed now, and I'd look at that and think, no.
Yeah.
No,
not to do it. Yeah.
Unless
Sure.
I've done it in the summer and I know the route, because we took like a few wrong routes. For anyone that's watching, I'll include some video footage so you can see like exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, that was probably most scared I've been.
Yeah.
Again, that falls under the isolation one, doesn't it? Being lost and feeling powerless is not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one there to save us.
Exactly. So.
Here we go.
Yeah. People who are watching from my sort of audience will probably know this story. Yeah, I've told it a few times. It's come up in therapy a few times for me. So it happened in Krakow in Poland when I was interrailing back in 2022.
So how old were you?
I was 21.
21?
So yeah, just turning 22 in a couple of months. And I'd been interrailing, and yeah, that had sort of kind of been going smoothly. I had a previous situation, which I'm not going to go into here. It happened a couple of nights before, but...
Were you with people or on your own?
I was with my mate, Charlie.
One mate?
Just the one mate at this point. But actually I'd met a friend in Krakow who was with his girlfriend, and I'm going to get into the story, which is an important sort of initial factor. So yeah, we meet up with my friend and his girlfriend, and we're at the hostel, and there's like a bar crawl starting off at the hostel. So yeah, we obviously get a few drinks in there, and sort of go to a few clubs, and then I think when we're about the third club, for me the alcohol has well and truly kicked in. I'm probably quite drunk, and then I think there's this guy talking to my mate's girlfriend, I think in quite a naggy, sort of persistent way, and she's probably trying to shake him a little bit. So I sort of get involved and sort of tell him to leave and stop talking to her and stuff like that. And at that point, the bouncers see this, I think, as aggression, and they kick me out the club. They like sort of manhandle me out the club, and then outside, when I'm sort of trying to understand why and get back inside the club, I get pepper sprayed by the bouncers and then punched in the face. So at this point, yeah, time sort of becomes a bit unfamiliar to me, but I'm just lying on the ground getting milk poured in my eyes. When I get back up off the ground, the police are like, yeah, you have to come with us, and sort of point at the back of a police van as to sort of tell me to go inside there. And I'm just like, but I haven't done anything wrong. And like, no, just come with us, And I'm like, but yeah, you're not telling me why. So at this point, I'm a little bit like concerned, because I'm in a foreign country that isn't England, and has strict sort of laws and things that protect you in a sort of situation like this. So anyway, I'm back in the police van. I'm sure a few of you saw my Snapchat story that night. It was pretty horrific.
We'll include some footage if we can.
Yeah, that will not be going on there. I'm pretty in a state of hysteria.
Did you, sorry since cut, but like think about running, just like legging it?
I was in the back of the police van.
No, before you went in.
No,
Once they've got you, they've kind of got
yeah,
you.
yeah. You don't want to mess around.
So that didn't go through your head.
No.
It wasn't like a fight.
No. I was calm.
Flat.
I was actually calm at this point after the milk was in my eyes and stuff. Like I was actually pretty calm, and they were just like, "Yeah, come with us." I can remember the interaction; it was quite smooth, and so that kind of I think warmed me up as well to that the whole situation. I was probably like, "All right, fine, just get it over and done with." Yeah, I didn't know about what was in store for me the night ahead of me. So anyway, I'm in the back of the police van, kind of expecting just to go to a police station, spend a night in a cell. So after about maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, I don't know, but 20 minutes in the back of a police van, the car stops, and the back door opens, and I get out, and I kind of looking around, and to see where I am, and yeah, it's sort of isolated. It's an isolated building. It's not much around it. But the main important thing, it didn't really look like a police station. So when I get escorted inside, this bit puts me on edge. I'm a little bit concerned now. When I go inside, everyone's in nurses' outfits, like medical uniform, and I'm like, well, I thought I was going to a police station. What the fuck is this place? And they make me hand over my things. They put it at the reception area, and then I'm escorted down the hallway where there are cells, and I'm put in a cell. So obviously you're in a cell alone, a lot of time to think, and I'm now sort of very concerned about the fact that I'm not at a police station, and so I start working up in my head that something's wrong, and I start banging on the doors. Oh, by the way, no one speaks any English, which, you know, that's understandable. I'm in a foreign country and that's fine, but that doesn't aid me in any. No one's explaining to me what's going on.
They're just telling you to follow.
Yeah, they just point and speak in Polish to each other and stuff like that. And that doesn't put my mind at ease. So when I'm in a cell, I start working it up and eventually start banging on the door to try and find out what was happening. And after the first half an hour, they kind of give me some water as I'm banging on a door, assuming that's what I want. But when I carry on banging for about 2 hours, I suddenly hear a keychain open the door, a key open the door, and the door swings open. And 5 very large Polish males, all decked out in nurses' attire, come in, restrain me, and take me out of the cell, and then move me to another room. And in this room, I see there's nothing except from a table sort of in the middle with leather straps to it. So they forcefully move me onto this table, and one's got his like knee on my chest, and they restrain me. Every limb, including my neck as well, was tied to this table using leather straps. So at this point, I think I'd watched like Stranger Things or something that summer, and I had it in my mind that this now wasn't a normal situation. I wasn't in a police station. I had thoughts of it being experimented on, and something darker being at play here, which you could argue is irrational, but I think based on the facts that were presented to me, actually was kind of logical in that situation. Nurses' outfits being tied with like leather straps to the table, and so the first hour was the most. It was the most horrible feeling I've ever experienced. I was trying to wriggle free, and I can. It's quite gory, but there's a photo of the damage I did to my ankle trying to break free. Don't know if we'll show that, but if we do, we'll put it there.
We'll show it.
And so, for the first few hours, I was trying to get free because I was expecting someone to come in and do horrible stuff, like experiment on me and, you know, put stuff in my body that would just, eventually cause me to die or something like that.
Or give me superpowers.
Yeah, or give me superpowers. So, at this point, I'm now experiencing the fear of death and dying. I was in a situation where I couldn't get out of, literally physically. I was tied. And being in a thing like that overwhelms you, being in a situation like that overwhelms you is the worst feeling. You're in a heightened state of fight or flight, and you can't do either. And all you can do is nothing, literally. So for the first 3 hours trying to break free, then after about the 4th, 5th hour, I then realise I can't break free. And every hour or so, someone comes in and checks on me. And I always ask them, am I okay? Am I okay? And all they would do is just like laugh at me, which made me think that this was really bad, because now they're like not treating me as human. They can see like the tears in my eyes, and like I'm begging for like, please, I'll pay anything, just let me go and stuff. And they just like,
yeah,
you silly English boy. And then so I was strapped to that table for 7 hours 32 minutes, because there was a clock in front of me and I counted down every single minute. And so after about the 5th hour, I just gave up. I accepted what was in store for me, my fate, which was death. And all I did was just go through my memory bank and just relive my memories. And I was doing that for a couple of hours when the door opens, and this is the moment I think it's in, because the head doctor comes in, and I'm expecting her now to do the deed, basically. But she comes in and breathalyzes me. At that point, I kind of realise, wait, why would she be breathalyzing me if I'm about to die?
Yeah.
And sort of she comes back in again, half an hour, breathalyzes me again, and she's like, okay, he's okay now. And then suddenly I'm let free. Not completely, because I'm then taken back to my cell.
Yeah.
But I realise now that this was...
You're not going to die.
Yeah, exactly. And that this was a drunk tank. Which,
Jesus.
And then about 3 hours later, I then am let free, and I have to go pay a taxi man a fine, because it turns out when I'd been punched in the face and pepper sprayed, I'd got onto a taxi, I'd fallen into a taxi, and he said there was some sort of damage. There was fucking nothing. There was literally nothing, because I went and saw the taxi the next day. There was nothing. He was like pointing at stuff that wasn't even there. So fair enough, just take my money. I was so, I was just
happy to be alive.
Yeah, I was just happy to be alive, and I was just take whatever, mate. I think it was like £100, and that was fine. But I have experienced proper fear in terms of an overwhelming. I've been beaten up by 7 or 8 people v me, and not being able to do anything back. But that excruciating moment of long doubt, like a significant amount of time, which is, I told you, 7 hours 32 minutes of contemplating your death and no way out of it. I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. It's the worst kind of fear, because you're experiencing the fear, whereas at least with sort of death, usually it's quite quick. Whereas you're worrying about death for an extended period of time, it's horrible.
God damn, that's heavy, man. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and it took a few years to get over. I'm still, I think I've finally done it, but
when you hear someone speaking Polish, you're like,
oh,
Jesus, well, I would be. Damn.
Yes.
Yeah.
You must have been pretty like fucked up though if they like put you in the drunk tank. You must have been fairly like drunk, I suppose.
I was, and there's no doubt I wasn't intoxicated, but I was. But I think it was the fact I got pepper sprayed made me seem a lot drunker than I was.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Because you get up off the ground, you're in a dazed state. You
don't know what's going on.
Exactly. I had just been punched. It's probably a bit of concussion.
I think they definitely should have at least had someone to tell you in English what was happening.
That's what I thought.
That's the worst part about it.
Explained,
they just did not even tell you.
One person explained that this is a drunk tank. Yeah. You're going to be okay. You just have to stay here.
Do you think they put you on the bed because you were like banging and stuff?
Yeah, that's exactly. They thought I was
like, going skits.
Yeah.
Damn. Well,
So
I know
easy.
what not to do if I ever go to Poland now. So
Yeah,
thank you
don't-
for that.
man.
Mine sounds lame now compared to that, but here we. Well,
Yeah.
Shit, yeah,
I'll
that's what I wanted to wait till the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
Basically, when I was probably about 13 or 14, we were just dossing about in a little park that had a road about 20 metres to the left of it, and the cars would be going up the road. And I had some cookies, and for some reason I thought it would be an entertaining or good idea. Again, I was pretty young, really daft thing. We were little arseholes at that time. I thought it'd be funny to try and throw a cookie. And because the cars were like pretty far away, it'd be a good shot if I hit the car. So I seen one coming up, I thought, yeah, I'll give it a go. Threw this cookie through the air. Again, probably one of the best shots I've actually ever made in my life, because it arced through the air perfectly, and just as this car came past, it just hit it right on the passenger window, which, to be fair, they probably thought was a rock or something, which probably made a pretty loud sound, probably scared the shit out of all the guys in this car. So we were all just sat on the swings and stuff like, oh, class shot, look at that, cool. Didn't really notice that the car up the road stopped, and then when we did turn and look and stopped, we seen like 5 pretty big dudes get out of this car and just start like actually sprinting towards us, and it had stopped about 60 metres up the road. So from where we were sat and to where we probably had about like 10 seconds at most before they were like on us. So we were like, well, not thinking, obviously like we could have been a smart ass and been like, oh, we're little kids, they're not going to do it to us. But at the time it was like, nah, we're out of here, man. So we just took off, ran down this path, and we could see them gaining on us. And it is that very like primal thing of being chased. That's one of the only times I've been chased before, but when you're chased by someone who looks like they have the intention of actually hurting you and they're shouting and they're actually sprinting after you, it's a bit of a different thing. Like I was definitely like, right, I'm not getting caught by these dudes. There's no way I'm letting that happen. So we run down into these little woods.
How many of there were you?
There would have been 4 of us,
Okay.
I think. There was me,
So just
2 of my mates, and then one of my mates'
chubby
cousins. Yeah, literally a chubby one. We were like, take it. But so we just ran down into this like little valley of woods that's all kind of overgrown and stuff. It was very cinematic, I must say. If someone had been filming it, it would have probably been a really cool thing to have like watched back.
Yeah.
But we were terrified, man. It was like, you know that bit in the Fellowship of the Ring when the hobbits are like hiding under that thing and the rider is just like
the dark rider,
the Nazgul or whatever, he's just like looking over for them. It was literally like that. We were hid under this banking and we could hear them again shouting. They'd like split up, they were going different ways around the wood. We could tell that they were actively like very much looking for us, and so eventually we just had to find a hiding point, a little hiding spot, and just wait and just hope that they didn't find us. And I remember just genuinely being very scared that we were going to be like battered or even worse. You never know, because people can get proper angry about stuff like that. Yeah. And
react on instinct where they don't think about the consequences.
Exactly, man. Because anger and fear again are pretty tied, closely. And I had a little pen knife in my pocket, and I remember I'm clutching it, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, am I going to have to like defend myself here? You know, am I going to have to do something terrible? I was like 13.
13. Okay, so quite old.
Yeah, I guess so. We used to. Yeah, it was in the phase of going out and probably
doing
in the phase of when
nothing.
we were doing like the most stupid shit.
Loitering.
Yeah, loitering, man. Just dossing. If we weren't chilling somewhere, we'd be exploring some sort of abandoned building or something like that, which I've got other stories about. But this was the single, I would say, probably the most scared I've ever been. More scared than when I got arrested. More scared than other times we've been in like fights and chases and stuff. This was, I think, because of how young I was. And because of how obviously bigger the people who were coming after us, and because of how angry they seemed, it was just like...
Well, when you get arrested, you know, there's systems and laws in place that protect you.
Yeah.
We're just leading back to my story, which backfired on me because I was expecting that and I didn't have that. But sorry, carry on.
Well, I got arrested when I was 14 years old. Bit of a different thing to you, but it was scary. But at the same time, there was the control. I knew
you're going to be okay.
Beat the shit out of me.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, well, I'm not in personal physical danger here. I'm going to get cussed by my mum and dad when I go home.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's not going to be the end of the world, and I'm going to live to see another day. And that ended up being fine anyway. But yeah, that's my story. Yeah. Now we'll get into part 3 of today's podcast, which is fear as a cultural phenomenon. So earlier we talked a little bit, I'm just going to loop back to some of what we talked about earlier. Earlier we talked about the different responses to fear. So there's the fight or flight response, which is the most commonly sort of known in both the natural world and the human world. And then there's also the freezing response, also known as being petrified. And amongst these, there's some other common responses to phobias and intense fears, such as
I just want to say that I'm very much a freezer.
the freezer.
Yeah, I in sort of heightened situations, I always freeze. I always just, like you said, become petrified, and can't move.
It's a weird feeling, isn't it?
It is a weird feeling.
I
weird.
can't say it's ever happened to me, but you do see it. It's one that's very common in the animal kingdom, I feel like, as well as in people. It's like always, well, it's like they say, a deer in the headlights, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Because I think your brain's trying to process what's going on.
Yeah.
And you inevitably get overwhelmed in your own mind about what your next move should be, where you just...
Do you think you could override it? By just
I
try
have overridden. I have overridden it, but not after the threat is happening. So there's a situation where I was being attacked in some sort of sense, a few days before actually the Krakow incident, and I froze, and then the attack started happening, and it wasn't until moments into the attack where stuff had already been done, where I then realised what was happening. I sort of came out of my trance and then managed to run off.
Okay.
So
So as well as freezing, there's also fainting and panic attacks are two things that can commonly happen to people. So I wanted to ask if you guys have ever experienced either fainting out of fear or a panic attack. And obviously you've mentioned freezing, but of those three, is there anything specifically which comes to mind that you personally have experienced? Like, have you ever fainted or had a panic attack or frozen in response to being that scared?
So I after being beaten up by sort of a group of people, as I was explaining earlier, separate to the incident I just said, I had about a year period where I'd experienced panic attacks daily, and the panic attacks they were always related to having a heart attack, where I'd feel a sort of twinge in my body and would get up in my own mind that I was having a heart attack, to the point where I became overwhelmed and would just break down.
Jesus.
Yeah, and that was every day for about a year. And it always happened in sort of public places, like when I was sitting on the tube, and just various public places. And I still get, I guess because it happens so much, my brain actually numbed to it, because you realise after a while that you're not having a heart attack because you're still here. But also going to therapy. Potentially, and I also went to therapy and got to the bottom of it and worked out what it was, and that also massively helped, because now I get the sort of the same feelings or same sort of irks and
but it doesn't
tweaks in my body,
attack.
But it doesn't trigger a full-blown panic attack.
Was there one specific moment which stopped the panic attacks from happening? Was there like a day when all of a sudden you were like, oh, you know what, I've moved past that, it doesn't faze me anymore? Or was it like a really slow, drawn-out process of getting over it? If you can remember.
Yeah, actually, my best mate died, and then all my attention focused onto grief, and that kind of...
do it.
And that after that, the panic attacks were no more, because I was dealing with another sort of heavy emotion.
Well, shit.
But that 4-year chapter where all of that stuff happened in was quite a heavy process that involved therapy to get over it, and therapy was probably my saving grace.
Yeah.
I still see a therapist now. Big up Jonathan.
Get him as a guest on the show.
I owe all of that to introspection and having a sort of a helping hand in working out my state of mind.
Nice, man. Well, good to know. So I personally have never had a panic attack. I've never fainted. I've been knocked out. I've knocked myself out, but I've never fainted, as far as I know.
Okay.
Or faced, and I've never been super scared. The only time I was as scared as I was talking about earlier, I just ran, man. I just took off. I just
lucky
got
bastard.
the fuck out of there. That's all I could think to do. No, I've never had any of those weird effects, which maybe means I've never actually been that scared yet in order to have that. How about you? You fainted or?
I've only ever had a panic attack one time in my life, and it's interesting because it's not like Harry's where it's a bit more real world. It was actually when I worked at Amazon.
Yeah.
And this is why I tell people, like, it drove me nuts, like, working there, because I'd worked there for about 6 or 7 months, and I was just so tired of, like, that same routine of standing on a line for 10 hours packing boxes. And one time I just clocked out early, went home, and I was like just like so on edge for the whole ride home, and walked my dogs, and I went to this field and just started like freaking out. Could not process like this job and this like monotony. It was literally driving me nuts.
Yeah. Fear of going insane, you think?
I think it was maybe that entrapment. I just felt so trapped in this
it's
job.
not what the human condition is designed for, is it? It's
No.
not what. No.
And I just could not. And I left pretty.
How's it? How
Well,
quickly
actually, I got another job.
Yeah, good.
At Morrison's, and so anyone that works at like Amazon or like in a factory doing the same thing. Some people don't mind it though. Like some people are okay with that. It pays the bills. But I'm someone that needs stimulus. Otherwise,
Greater purpose, I think.
I'll start looking for things to do. Like I'll invent little ways to like make a game out of it. Like anything to. It's a blessing and a curse.
Your brain needs to actually be working a little bit, doesn't it? Because otherwise you'll get stupid. And
autonomy, where you're kind of living your existence in autopilot. Where you're not thinking, is I think the worst kind of existence, where you're not you're just not living.
That's why the great white shark died after 10 days in the Tokyo Aquarium. Unless I'm wrong about that, I'm pretty sure it was the Tokyo Aquarium. They got a great white shark in,
really?
Huge tank, but it's not something that's designed to live in a
captivity
in a tank. It died due to stress. It stressed itself out so much within that 10 days. It literally killed itself because it needs to hunt and it needs to move. It needs to travel. It's like we're not great white sharks, but yet we need to do things, don't we? We're designed. Our brains are designed as such that we have to use them. If we're not using them to an extent, then I think we go mental.
Sloths are.
No, we got to do stuff, man.
And that's what makes us so good at inventing things and whatever. But also, it creates stress on if you're in like a situation that you don't want to be in, like an Amazon.
Yeah.
Right. So before we move on to the final sort of thing, I'm just going to quickly ask you guys if you consider yourself as having any. So we talked about rational fears earlier, and I know you mentioned spiders already.
Yeah.
I was gonna.
I think that's an irrational fear.
Irrational, yeah. I suppose it probably is. I was going to ask if you can think of any irrational fears that you have, like totally not rational. Because I'd say spiders, arguably, could be perceived as rational.
But it's when I see photos of them on the internet when they're not there in front of me. They don't present an immediate danger, and the fact that I see a photo of them makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's kind of dumb. Yeah.
I mean, I think I have one of snakes. Like I could look at a picture of it and I can watch videos and I find them quite cool. But once I see one even in a tank, I start panicking. And I actually wanted to make a short little documentary on getting over that fear because I think it's really easy. I just need to stand there with it
and grab one and stroke it.
Obviously not something that can kill me, but like
get an anaconda around your neck.
Like
start small and then
But that's my only irrational fear. What about you, man?
I've always had a bit of a thing about clowns. Recently, not so much. It almost kind of turned. It went the other way, actually. To be honest, in a bit of a weird way. Like
sexually,
baiting myself out. If a girl is dressed like a clown, all of a sudden, one day I just looked at like a girl dressed as a clown. And I was like, interesting. But in terms of like Pennywise and shit, always used to terrify me. Like really.
The original Pennywise. Tim Curry's.
Tim Curry's was great, but the new one I thought did really well as well.
Do you remember that phase in like 2016?
Yes, the killer clowns.
I used to do.
I think I got a fear of clowns out of that.
Yeah, maybe that was
a mass hysteria.
Yeah, I think I was already on my way to it before that happened. So when that happened, I was like, if I see a clown, I'm gonna fucking.
I think I saw him once, one guy once, but like, that
good.
Was weird.
I think it might have all been staged.
I think it was because I remember I seen one video where a clown like pulled up on a guy's car and the guy just like, and the clown was probably like trying to like prank the dude and scare him, and the guy just got out with a baseball bat and just went and put his legs in and he just dealt with him, which is not how the clown.
Should we restart that phase? Start walking around London dressed as clowns.
Right, okay, so we've talked about rational fears, irrational fears, and now we're going to talk kind of more about fear as a cultural phenomenon, as we were supposed to, before I kind of got a little sidetracked. But in terms of people, for all the bad things that come with fear, like anxiety, unpleasantness, freezing up, passing out, all that shit.
Preventing you from making opportunities.
Exactly, everything, all the nasty things that come with fear, but yet we as a species are undoubtedly obsessed with fear. Yeah. We enjoy it. We make horror movies, media, we like video games, there's immersive theme parks,
horror mazes.
Yeah, mazes. There's immersive video games that are literally designed to be like with a VR headset and stuff, it's designed like to actually be one of the scariest things you can experience, virtually speaking. Yeah. And people love it, and it's one of the biggest some horror movies gross like hundreds of millions a year. Like the industry as a whole probably drags in it's probably one of the best industries in terms of like a specific genre for film. I'm trying to think of an example of horror films that have done really well this year. Well, you look at Longlegs. I think that was the highest grossing horror film.
Substance.
The Substance. It's people, because I think there's so much variation within the horror genre that you can do so many things with it, and it does fascinate people.
Do you not think it's like controlled horror? Like it's controlled fear though, because you can always turn the film off. Like, or you can always...
Not in the cinema, you can't.
You can always leave though.
Yeah. You could. Yeah, you could do. It's controlled because
there's a safe button. There's a safe button.
Yeah, because you don't want to actually be in danger. You want to feel like you're in danger, and you want to see the character being in danger and put yourself in their shoes. But you don't actually want to get chased by a murderer. No one wants that shit. You want to experience it via proxy, but no one would actually enjoy that. Whereas you can enjoy the feeling of getting jump scared in a horror movie or suspense.
I hate that feeling though.
I'm not a fan.
I mean, I hate the actual jump scare, but the like 10-15 seconds after is such a weirdly like nice feeling, I think.
I know what you mean.
Because you're safe.
You are safe, and you realise it's and the scary things pass, and you can be like, So I was going to ask you guys if you have any particular piece of horror media. It doesn't have to actually be explicitly horror media, but any media which really inspires fear within you guys.
Yeah. I have one straight off the bat.
It can be a movie, book.
Yeah. Mine is a movie.
Go on.
It's the Blair Witch Project. I remember.
He's a big fan.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I can remember watching that maybe when I was either 12 or 13. Might have even been earlier, like 11. And it had a really profound impact on me. And I've actually got a love for forests. I think that kind of stems out of that experience I shared when watching it for the first time. And the thing about that film is, if you've seen the film, it's about three sort of documentary filmmakers who go to make a documentary about this sort of folk tale in urban Maryland. Rural urban Maryland, and in a place that was formerly known as Blair.
America.
Huh?
It's America, isn't it?
America. Maryland, yeah. And they go deeper and deeper into the woods trying to get to the bottom of this tale to try and find the Blair Witch, and weird things start happening.
It goes pretty tits up.
It does go pretty tits up. But yeah, I think that was the first time I can remember the first moment I experienced proper fear. I think that was the first big horror movie I watched, and nothing has come close to scaring me in that way ever since. And I got an enjoyable feeling out of it. I sort of rewatch it once a year, every sort of Halloween time, to experience that feeling that I felt when I was a kid.
Because there is something very nice about it.
There's
something fascinating about feeling actually as scared as that, but yet being safe on your couch or something. It is very cool.
Exactly. And actually at Thorpe Park they did a Blair Witch maze, and I remember being so excited to go for that. It was terrifying. Again, I went when I was sort of 11, 12. Oh. Yeah. Pretty soon after I'd watched the movie for the first time, I went with my family, and that was a very fun experience, but also first time I'd been in a horror maze, so absolutely terrifying. But yeah, it was. I got fond memories of that feeling of coming out the other side, having conquered it. I think the conquering element of it.
Yeah.
More so with with the film and both the maze. Yeah, you come out thinking, I did it.
I've had it.
I've sorted it. It's.
So in that sense, the fear that you experience, it's almost like it's like a journey in and of itself, and then when you come out the other side of it, it's like you've been almost
It's
transformed.
empowering. It's empowering.
Yeah. And maybe that's part of the reason why it's such a successful genre.
Yeah.
People are so obsessed with it, is because it does give you that.
It's actually, I think, a form of cognitive behavioural therapy. You look at the thing that kind of traditionally scares you the most, you sit with it, and you experience it, and you face it, and you come out the other side,
much stronger,
and you feel much stronger out of it. So maybe that's what horror films. Yeah,
that's probably part of it, isn't it?
It's a CBT based sort of reading of it. Sam?
Well, I have an interesting one because them classic horror films,
like such as
like the Conjuring, Blair Witch Project.
Tradition, yeah.
They make me in the moment feel quite scared, but the ones that stick with me are the ones I'm going to use the Requiem for a Dream.
It's like, more psychological.
That is more horrifying for me because
it's real.
It's like it's like a real story, and it's the Requiem for a Dream. It's about this guy. His kind of mum's like taking speed because she wants to lose weight, and he's also taking like heroin.
They're addicted to everything. It's addiction in every form. Yeah.
And it's that slow. He's slowly like destroying himself and
descent into madness.
And I think that really like horror. It didn't like make me jump and
it's
scare
a very
me,
affecting
but
film.
It was very like disturbing. Is probably, and that scares me more, I suppose.
Because you then go that night and you think about it.
Yeah,
and it keeps you up. Whereas I don't think a jump scare necessarily keeps you up.
Because it's a totally different thing. Being scared and being actually disturbed is when disturbed is that feeling when you're walking away from the cinema, you're walking home and you're just quiet because you can't actually stop thinking about that thing that you've just seen, and it does like worm its way into your mind. Whereas a jump scare, you've forgotten about it within 10 minutes, and you're like,
that film we were watching last night, Rosemary's Baby, disturbed me.
Did it?
Yeah. The playing with sanity. And the descent into sanity when all your close ones around you, well, her partner in that case, was also exhibiting strange behaviour, making you question your own sanity.
And then
gaslighting.
And it's when she has started to suss it.
Yeah.
And she goes to the one person who she hopes she'll be safe with.
Dr. Hill. And he is in on it as well.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
I don't think he is actually.
I think they convinced him that she was insane. I think she sounded so crazy that he just thinks that
he just didn't know what to do. And just
I think he respected Saperstein. I think he respected him as a senior figure, and therefore
trusted him to sort it out.
Yeah, a lot of metaphors in that.
That was a good movie actually.
But it was smart movie. Really cool.
Yeah.
So for mine, I've got two, which I think. So you guys have said movies, so I'll stay away from films. First and foremost, I would say the book It by Stephen King.
Unbelievable.
Is probably not only one of the best books I've ever read, but the only book to have ever actually had me scared in a room surrounded by my family in the daytime. I distinctly remember. It was a bit when Eddie, one of the kids, he's grown up and he's returned to the town, as they all do, 27 years after the original events.
Yeah.
And he's just visited by this apparition of this dead girl who died in a car crash or something when he was younger, supposedly. And I can't really say exactly what about it, but I was reading it, and I was in the living room. My mum and dad, they're all watching TV and chatting away and stuff.
Was it that feeling of dread?
And it was genuinely the feeling of dread. And I was sat there, and goosebumps just ran through my whole body. And I was there, and I was like, I'm actually genuinely scared right now, even though I'm just reading a book. Something about this is more unsettling than probably anything I've seen in a film, to be honest. It was.
Did you read Doctor Sleep?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. I thought a wonderful book.
Yeah, really good. He can write, man. He can write a bloody good book, can Stephen King.
The Shining and Doctor Sleep.
And it, like, the way it ties in so many social things. There's the horrible kind of racist, homophobic undertones to it all. There's a lot of really nasty stuff in the book. But it's not a pleasant book.
What I like about it is the coming of age element of it, and that's what really captured me.
Apart from when they all have sex in the suit.
Yeah.
That was weird. I wasn't sure exactly where he was going with that, to be honest. Stephen, if you ever see this, we'd like an explanation about that. Yeah.
How old were you when you read it?
I was.
Approximately.
I'll have been about 15, 16 when I read it. So I wasn't super young. I read The Shining probably when I was like 11.
Yeah, I read that when I was like 11,
but,
12.
I saved it, and I'm glad I saved it because I wouldn't have even understood it had I tried to read it when I was younger.
What did you save? Sorry.
But yeah, I'd recommend it, man, if you haven't read it. It's a brilliant book. I lent it to someone and they just took it, and then now I'm not in contact with them anymore. So I've lost my copy of the book, unfortunately. Sick. But it's good, and the first movie was pretty good too. But yeah, that's media that definitely inspires fear because of how it's a bit of everything. it's horror on the low key human level, and then it's cosmic horror as well, and it's all that really weird, twisted stuff.
Just to follow on about literature and horror, I used to read urban legends. Yeah, because it just came into my mind after reading, and reading tales. I think Slender Man was quite a famous one, but there are other ones that brought me so much fear. And actually, again with the woods, they always seem to be a recurring involvement of forest. Forest as being the place where these scary things happen. Yeah. And I can remember I'd always I'd quite horribly recount these tales to my sister. And one particular urban legend, have you heard of Bloody Mary?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you say it. And there was another one. Yeah. She was about 8 or 9 when I was telling her these stories. She wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So sorry, Scarlett. But yeah, it really got to her. But other ones really got to me because there was kind of a real element to these. An urban legend is it kind of mixes fantasy and non-fiction, and makes it seem in the same way the Blair Witch Project did. It made it seem like it was a real sort of thing that was happening. But I'm so surprised that the power of words are able to do that to you. Instead of just a visual.
Yeah. It's impressive.
I used to be scared of the Bloody Mary. And
yeah,
I tried it.
Me too.
Yeah, I wasn't scared of it because nothing happened.
Yeah, no,
I never did get to trying it actually.
Oh, you should try it.
That one never really affected me too much. I was always quite scared of the concept of the Skinwalker. I thought
the Skinwalker, the shapeshifter. Yeah.
The idea of something taking the form of someone who you're close to or who you love, or like it appearing to you as your dad,
and then acting a bit off,
and you'd be able to tell that there's something wasn't
just
right
because
but it'd be
that
too
feeling
late.
of dread.
Yeah, it's definitely dread. Yeah. One more bit of media. My last thing, I would say it's a musical project actually called, and I've told you about this before.
The Going Insane one.
Kind of, yeah. It's called
Dementia.
Everywhere at the End of Time.
Yeah.
And it's by a guy called, the name he made the project under was The Caretaker. I've forgotten what his actual name is, but I think he's from Manchester actually. And so it's 6 albums, and the whole thing's like 6 hours, and it's basically a 6-hour audiological representation of what it is like to have dementia. So it's annoying actually because it's kind of been memed. Everyone will recognise that one thing.
Careful of copyright.
Yeah, no, I think it should. I think it should be alright, to be honest with you. The one where it's like.
Anyway, we get the point.
Yeah. Well, that was terrible.
Yeah.
Maybe I can just edit it in or some shit. But it's 6 hours long, 6.5 hours long, and each stage represents the different stages of dementia. So first, it's all just kind of old ballroom music. It sounds grainy, but everything's nice.
Is it music from The Shining?
No.
No, because first.
No. And then the second one, it's the same music. It's just slightly more distorted and wrong, and you can just tell that something is wrong with it. And then as it goes along, it's by the third one, it doesn't even sound like music anymore. And then the last and that's only 2 hours in, and the last 4 hours, it's basically just noise. But there's something about it which is just genuinely, it is dreadful. It is like, it makes you feel dread. So I listened to it all in one go. I just shut myself in my room, turned the lights off, and just listened to the whole 6.5 hours one day. I must have had some spare time on my hands. And it was probably one of the scariest things I've ever actually forced myself to go through, because it's, even though you're just hearing it, the soundscape is unbelievable, man. I can't even really put it into words what it feels like to listen to. I think everyone should listen to it at least once in their life. My cousin has it on vinyl, which is fucking crazy.
Can you get it on
vinyl? Yeah. The idea of it's 6 different albums, so it's the 6 things.
Right.
But the idea of listening to that, I'm gonna have to play a few seconds. It's all on YouTube. So this is the famous one.
I swear it is. It sounds like The Shining.
I don't think it's from The Shining. I could be wrong. So this is the famous one, which is the start, and this is it sounding normal, and then
I think it is The Shining. Anyway.
And then eventually it just kind of sounds like this.
Yeah.
And it just gets really twisted, and then
like a bad acid trip. A
little bit, yeah. And by stage 6 it's like post-awareness.
Yeah.
So the very last thing you hear is a really faint, light version of the original one again.
Ego
But
death.
really,
almost.
yeah. And then there's just a minute of silence
Yeah.
before it ends, and it's even now I've got goosebumps because it's something else.
Yeah.
Definitely something else. I would say that's probably the scariest thing I've ever heard. Can't say I've watched, but yeah, heard.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I believe that kind of about wraps it up. Unless
Wraps
you
it
guys
up.
have any, we're about an hour and a half there. So
No.
yeah,
Good discussion about fear.
yeah, man, yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
and I guess we'll leave the viewers, with just think about your fears and compare them to ours, and
Stick a few comments on what scares you most.
Yeah, let us know.
comment what scares.
If there's anything that you think, especially if it's kind of a niche thing, we're always up for finding out new things. If there's a film that you think is kind of weird that we wouldn't have seen, that is scary, definitely let us know. So, yeah.
Peace out.
Follow the Instagram, Zone3 Media, our website, www.zone3media.co.uk.
That's the one.
And
Nice. Thank you
Yeah.
very
see you
much.
next week.
Yeah, I've been
Peace out.
Sam.
Merry Christmas.
See ya.
Merry Christmas.